For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our social media platforms and our YouTube channel, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. With Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. It's a day full of D's here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You have yours truly, Drew. You have Dave. We have Dan Robertson. We have Dan Fink. It is quadruple D day here at the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, talking about the Winnipeg Jets for the next couple of hours. It's going to be a lot of fun, much like it was a lot of fun for the Jets on this road trip in Detroit on Wednesday, and then with an exclamation mark in Columbus last night. The good times keep on rolling for the Winnipeg Jets. Good morning, Mr. Minuk. How are you on this Saturday morning? I will let the audience know, to your credit, that you're playing hurt, that you have the dreaded COVID virus.
Yeah.
And you're playing hurt, and you're here, and you're still powering through like the hero that you are. Everybody, a round of applause for Dave Minuk for doing such a great job playing hurt.
Yeah, I got the COVID, but it's all good. It's all good. I'm fine. Thank you, Drew. There's joy in Joyland. Not having COVID, of course, is necessarily joy, but folks have joy for the way the Jets have played, the way they've bounced back this week. The fact is that, there was a distaste in their mouths after what happened on Monday, especially against that opponent. Yeah. And then to bounce back, and you could say, well, weaker opponents, and they are, of course, but Columbus has been playing very good hockey. Detroit, not so much, but Columbus has been playing very good hockey, and the Jets just dominated them from start of the puck drop to finish. So a real good statement game from Winnipeg to kind of change the narrative, to put the joy back in Joyland. And, it's one of those, like I said, Jets fans, I put it out there on Twitter last night, Drew, because it is rather remarkable when you look at right now, and we're 11 games in. This is a fairly significant portion of the season. It's not like if this was 3, 4, even 5 games, you'd say, okay, fine, it is what it is. But they're 10 games in, or 11 games in, sorry. 10 wins in 11 games, first in the NHL. 909 winning percentage, first in the NHL. 52 goals for, first in the NHL. 26 goals against, fourth in the NHL, plus 26 goal differential, significantly better than I think their next opponent by about 7. That's first in the NHL. And the power play, no surprise, first in the NHL, 45.2%, which is I think about 10% higher than Ottawa's, and fully sustainable to be maintained at that pace for the rest of the year.
No
but
question.
Joking aside, for the Jets to be where they are in so many of those categories, it just shows that you've got Connor Hellebuck, who's playing real well. Eric Comrie is giving you the starts that you needed from a backup goaltender. He's getting the wins. That's all that matters. How many goals he gives up really is immaterial. At the end of the day, you just want him to give you a quality start. Well, yeah, and which obviously goals that he allows in impacts that. But also, like I said, that he's able to give you enough to get those wins. He has obviously 3 wins from Eric Comrie. That's big. And the team is jiving. You've got, whether it's the Ehlers line or the Scheifele line / Connor line, all those guys, Gabe Velarde's going. So all these guys are going. And then you've got that Lowry line. What we talk about have to be contributors, not just at holding the opposition's best players to nothing, but also to contribute. And they're doing that as well. And Drew, quickly, I got to mention the fourth line, because as you pointed out, they were very good last night as well.
They're munching their minutes and they're dominating their opponent, even if it doesn't necessarily translate into an overwhelming number of points for them. Anytime your fourth line can win its minutes that it's playing and do so in a one-sided fashion, it's only going to snowball and have a positive impact on the rest of the team as well. Again, we are, for those who missed it yesterday, as he's away this weekend, we look forward to welcoming him back on Tuesday for the post-game show after the Jets and the Utah Hockey Club, which will take me a long time to say properly and not screw up over the course of the next couple of days. And we'll delve deep into the upcoming schedule. We'll delve deep into tomorrow's opponent, the Tampa Bay Lightning. All of that over the next couple hours as we work on here through the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. And of course, that's presented by Play Now. Big thanks to Play Now. They're the official betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site. 18 plus. Please enjoy responsibly. Thanks to them for their continued support of our programming. What I wanted to start with, though, because I know this sounds a little arrogant and it sounds a little bit over the top, but there's the actual team right now, there's not a ton to discuss because things are going so well. And I don't want to just rehash the conversation that we had last Saturday because I don't think that would be fair to our audience. I think that would be cheating our loyal viewers on a Saturday morning. What I want to ask you, Dave, with 4 unrestricted free agent forwards at the end of the year, and 1 unrestricted defenseman at the end of the year. Well, sorry, more than 1, but I'm just only going to focus on Neil Pionk, all due respect to Hayden Fleury and Dylan Coughlin. But those 5 UFAs, Pionk on the back end, and then you got Ehlers, Iafallo, Appleton, and the Mesnikov up front.
Yeah.
Given everything that's coming up through the Jets pipeline, be it at the Moose level, be it at the junior level still, of the 5 UFAs, given their context on the team, given players who could potentially replace them in the lineup, who to you, of the 5, which one is at the top of the list for you in terms of priority to re-sign? And I also want to keep you, I also want you to take into context the cost that it's going to be to re-sign those players and their age when that contract would be signed. So looking at it from with all the layers involved, all the complexities involved of the 5 UFAs, take into account what you've seen over the years, take into account what you've seen so far through 11 games, who to you, and I want the chat to chime in as well, who to you is the number 1 priority in re-signing?
Nikolai Ehlers. I mean, Nikolai Ehlers is just beyond dynamic, and look, he's 28 years old. He's still in the prime of his career. So there's, I honestly think he's scratching the surface this season. Scott Arniel before the season began called him a game breaker. I think that's a fair assessment. He's getting more opportunity, and the power play 1 is just one of those things that you're like, okay, well, how do you keep him happy? Now, look, we don't know if he's willing to sign. He's never said that. He's kind of kept that close to the vest. And so, you need 2 to tango. You need a willing participant in order to sign him. But, it's like I said, the funniest part, and we're early in this season, he's only played 7 more seconds a game on average than he did last year. So last year, everybody's big thing with Nikolai Ehlers was he's not playing enough minutes.
Right.
And, he's been in that high, close to 16-minute mark per game on average for the last 3 seasons. Now, the power play opportunity is clearly, a benefit to him. And although his goals yesterday were 5-on-5, but the fact of the matter is that you don't have someone who's that dynamic. Now, you could say, well, Brad Lambert has speed. Brad Lambert isn't a winger, of course. Brad Lambert prefers to play the middle. But as Nate Schmidt told me many years ago when I had a conversation with him, you'll play wherever you need to play in order to be in the NHL. He was a left shot guy. He was coming up through the Capital system. The Capital said, can you play on the right side? He looked at all the veterans on the left. He said, I sure will learn how to. And he did. And he adapted, and he showed that was how his path was going to be to the NHL. So I suspect that the Jets said to Brad Lambert, we're going to play you as a winger. He's not going to say, well, no, you know what? I'll wait till my chance comes to play at center. Right. But if you look at a comparable from a Jets perspective for Nikolai Ehlers, a guy who's got speed, a guy who's got a fantastic shot. I mean, Brad Lambert is kind of that easy comparable, but Brad Lambert is young, right? Brad Lambert was drafted in 2022. So, he is significantly younger than Nikolai Ehlers, and there's going to be growing pains with him. If you think you're in a window right now for this Jets club, which they are obviously with the Hellebuck and the Scheifele deals, do you think that Nikolai Ehlers is easily replaceable? To me, he's not. to me, what he brings to a team, what he brings night in, night out, is significantly important. That game breaking element, that human zone entry, as we call them, all of those things, Drew. I mean, and the cap is going up. We all know that the cap will be, significantly increased. The Jets.
So you talk about, so let me just jump in there for you right now. And this is with of course, all those 5 UFAs that I just mentioned coming off the books, in addition to the Wheeler buyout. And the Wheeler buyout comes off the books. And I think there's one more buyout that comes off, but let me just double check on that one.
Well,
no, just the Wheeler one. The Schmidt one is still there at 1.6 million.
Yeah, I was gonna say Schmidt still have one more year.
Yeah, sorry, I was wrong. I was getting my numbers confused there. But with all that said, the Jets entering next year, if they don't re-sign any of these guys, will have $34.6 million in cap space, which is a ginormous number.
Sorry, what was the number you said?
34.6 million in cap space if they sign none of those 5 UFAs that I mentioned. So it's not the cap space isn't going to be the problem, really. And yes, they're going to have to sign a couple of guys. They're going to have to sign Velarde. They're not going to have, so he's going to take up, a fair bit of cash as well. Yep. But that he's the main RFA that's going to cost you money. Morgan Barron's going to cost you a little bit. Rasmus Kupari, if he continues playing like he's playing, is going to cost you a little bit as well. But they're going to have plenty of cap space. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm. Now, the decision for the Jets, and it's not an easy one. It's one they've had to do before. Is what do you do with this player? Do you keep him for an own rental and then hope that you can have he'll have a significant impact in the playoffs, and then you say to him, well, Nikolai, you've been a good soldier since we drafted you in 2014 back in Philadelphia. We were there, Drew.
We were.
And if you and then you kind of,
Kenny
take your chance.
Owes you a new shirt.
Yes. Ken Weeb did ruin my shirt. It's like I wear that shirt whenever Ken is on our show, like George Costanza did with that woman who spilled Bosco. I think it was Bosco.
No, Bosco was his code.
I know, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't. It was she spilled some sort of liquid all over his shirt. So his shirt, it was wine. Sorry, it was wine, and it was all over his red shirt. So he would wear it anytime, and he wanted to take off his sweater and be like, "You ruined this." I do that to Weber whenever he comes on our show. I'm like, Ken, brand new shirt, ruined because of your sloppiness with wine at the dinner.
Yeah.
Anyways, but getting back from the 2014 draft, which was, we can also mention the time that Drew almost took a ball to the face in
that was in Philly.
Yeah, I know. What was the name of the stadium again? I can't remember.
Citizen Bank Park.
Yeah, that was a great game. 14th inning. Chase Utley hits a home run,
walk-off home run.
Yeah, 10,000 miles in the air. I'm like under it. I'm like, I don't think so. Not gonna break my hand for this. Drew dives for the ball, and some other dude gets it. Very fun.
Yeah. After it ricochets off the chair behind me, smacks me in the face, and leaves me bruised.
But and it sounded like a bomb went off. How loud that when it hit the us in the outfield. But anyways, look, I just think that nobody is like Nikolai Ehlers. Now Neil Pionk, obviously he's bouncing back this year. This is what Jets fans saw. Yeah, again, so far. Now the question for Pionk though is Elias Salamonson. Salamonson, right shot defenseman, second rounder. A lot of folks are understandably very excited. He's getting his feet wet at the American Hockey League level with the Manitoba Moose. Daniel Fink can tell us more about him when he joins us at 10:30. But it's a big jump to go from Sweden, where he did real well, and all the reports, I'm not going to pretend like I watched it, but all the reports said he was really good. He plays aggressive, but he has to adapt, right? He has to adapt to the ice surface. So can you've got Colin Miller next year. Can you move Colin Miller up and bring Elias Salamonson onto that third pairing to start? Again, those are all questions for the Jets. Well, in terms of if you don't want to try and if you can't re-sign or you don't want to re-sign, because term is the biggest Achilles heel, right, Drew? Like that to me is with a guy like Neil Pionk, especially, you're looking at a guy who's 29, right? And so, and you've had 2 off years. Now, if he has a phenomenal year, again, I think if you're the Jets, you're probably happy with it. But to me, I think he can be replaced. That's a big ask for Salamonson. But again, like I said,
do you think he can be replaced? Just look at how the Jets developed Dylan Samberg. I think you can use comparables here.
Yeah.
Salamonson, obviously, second round pick. Samberg, second round pick. Samberg, spent his time in the in the U.S. college system before coming up to playing in the NHL. Sal Monson over in Sweden now. What's going to be a year or however many games of seasoning at the AHL level. It's not the Jets' style to promote somebody into a top 4 role faster than they really are ready for it. So with regard to Pionk, does that and your comments I think about term are bang on.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Jets, again, it's early in the year, so
you're not going to get a Nito Niederreiter 3-year deal out of Neil Pionk.
Well, I don't think you would. I mean, if you did, and that 3rd year involved him getting passed by Sal Monson for the, and then Pionk becomes the 3rd pair right side defenseman, maybe, but I don't think you want to do anything to block, Sal Monson's, projected path to NHL regular playing, but at the same time, you don't want to fast forward it to a spot where he's not ready. And that's the give and take. So if Neil Pionk is willing to take a 2-year deal, I'm just throwing, years out here for, which gives you that additional bridge, maybe then, Sal Monson, if he's ready next year, he comes in, he's your 3rd pairing right side guy, just like the Jets developed Sandberg as your 3rd pairing, as a 3rd pairing left side guy. Pionk might have on a 2-year deal with probably a similar cap hit. I don't think that he's necessarily, depends on what happens this year, because if he continues to be the 2nd leading defenseman in scoring, he's going to get a big contract. But, something like that, to bridge that gap, I think the Jets would certainly, they wouldn't forget about that as an option just because of how well Pionk is playing so far this year. But the big question, of course, is will that continue for the next 71 or so games?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, I think it's a little bit of a dream to think that he'll sign a 2-year deal. That seems very unlikely to me.
Right.
I mean, this is the point of his career where he's, going to swing for that last big contract.
Right.
A 4 or 5. I mean, I'd be shocked if it was anything less than 4 or 5 years.
Well, because 30-year-old, I mean, we've seen it. We see it all throughout the league. 30-year-old players still get paid. Now, they might not get paid, 5-6 years by sort of what I'll describe as the smartest clubs in the league.
Yeah.
But I mean, you see Tyler Toffoli. There's always Tyler Toffoli, who didn't look great as a member of the Winnipeg Jets last year, goes out and he still is able to get the 4 or 5 year contract that he got from the San Jose Sharks. So bad teams need veteran players and are willing to overpay for them because they usually have a lot of cap space, and the cap isn't a factor for them when they're, until those contracts expire. So you're absolutely right. To expect Neil Pionk to take a hometown discount, especially playing the way he's playing so far,
right,
is unrealistic. But then if you're the Jets at the same time, well, how comfortable are you giving him that 5 or a 6-year deal?
I mean, we always make fun of Kevin Cheveldayoff's, like his what his job is, and sometimes the way he discusses things. But look, at the end of the day, he's not, a GM has to just think now, what makes my hockey club better? What makes my hockey club a contender for a Stanley Cup this year? But also, how are the pieces going to fit in the puzzle through the years? Where, when am I expecting, the next round of guys to come through? Look, I mean, ultimately, what did the Jets do after their first time of ever making the playoffs in 15-16, right?
They took a step back.
They took a step back. And why? Because they allowed I guess I suspect that if they would have had a young forward group step up, they would have been happy with that. But you're right. They were willing to take that pain in order to give those guys that year of experience. So 16-17 was a year of pain, but look what it gave them. It gave them 17-18 and 18-19, 2 very good years from a team standpoint. Now, the problem is that you lost the defensive core that you had developed or you had drafted, like guys like Jacob Trouba and Sherratt and Bufflin, but Tyler Myers, you didn't draft for him, you traded for him. And that to me is, obviously it was good in the sense that they were able to get those guys the opportunity, the Kyle Connors, the Patrick Laines. So you have to wonder what the Jets' plan is going to be. I mean, because you can't and I've seen some of the comments in the chat, and I tend to agree. Like, this is the time where it's like we need to find a good GM has to find a replacement to get away from a bad contract.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think a Nikolai Ehlers long-term deal ages poorly. I really don't. I think that Nikolai Ehlers is going to be a good player, a consistent player for a number of years. You can say, can you win with Nikolai Ehlers? Guys, no offense. You can ask that question about any of these players because this Jets team has not done anything of significance. Obviously, sweeping the Oilers in the bubble year will always resonate with Winnipeggers because of the Smythe Division days. But at the end of the day, this is a team that, the guys have gotten far, Western Conference Finals, farther than any other Jets team in 1 or 2.0 history. But it's just, you need to have, again, game breakers. And Nikolai Ehlers, to me, is going to be a game breaker for a number of years.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating one because when you look at Ehlers, and Ehlers is so dynamic. We saw it last night on display, and he's having a great start to this year. But after the first couple games where they were a little bit slow going, he's found his groove since then. You look at Ehlers, and what he brings to the table is very unicorn-like. That kind of speed, that kind of dynamic skill set doesn't happen every day, doesn't grow on trees. But at the same time, if you had to say, where's the Jets' biggest position of strength moving forward, it is probably up front with a forward group, with young forward prospects. All due respect to Sal Monson, but we know the names. We've talked about it before on the show. We don't need to rehash it. Everybody knows the guys who are, champing at the bit to get their opportunity. But at the same time, all of a sudden, if you re-sign Ehlers, maybe you sort of reconfigure your thought process for your forward group. If all of a sudden you re-sign Ehlers and you just keep him with Connor and Scheifele, assuming Connor's got a year left after this year, so we'll obviously deal with that at that point in time. And you got Perfetti, and you got all these sort of the top 6 name forwards that you know of. Maybe all of a sudden you have a young gun forward line that comes in and gets soft minutes to start, next year. And then they develop that way as well. And all of a sudden, you have 3 dynamic scoring lines. And then, of course, you still have the Lowry, you have Lowry, Niederreiter, and if it's Appleton or if it's Chibrikov or whomever it might be, somebody else playing that role if it's not Appleton, because he, of course, is also UFA. Probably UFA that's not going to cost you a ton of money either, but he's probably considering that this is his opportunity to cash in, on a decent length contract at a decent term as well, because he's been so important to the Winnipeg Jets for the last year plus.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question about it. And he's homegrown talent, right? He's probably the best 6th rounder the Jets have ever drafted. And, he is a guy possessed. Like, I mean, I've covered him since he first joined the Manitoba Moose, was phenomenal for Manitoba in that, that big year with them, and, alongside Sami Niku and that sort of thing. He's an impactful player, and he's a right shot. He's a right shot, which is obviously a premium, and it's good to have for that line. But the question becomes, can he be replaced by someone? And, can you put a Rasmus Kupari in Mason Appleton's spot and have him have success? Right. Because as I said,
Morgan Barron. I mean, again,
Morgan Barron's a guy Morgan Barron we've also talked about a lot, right, Drew? As a guy who could maybe potentially get
sort of the forgotten guy so far this year. I would argue is that Morgan Barron. He's on that 4th line with Iafallo and Kupari, and he does a great job with them. But he's not somebody that's sort of been top of mind in terms of conversation, in terms of discussion so far this year, because he just goes about doing his job, in a yeoman's effort. I see Dan Robertson is backstage. Are you ready to go, Dan? Are you giving us the thumbs up? Okay, 2 thumbs up. So we'll bring in Dan Robertson early this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I have to ask Dan, first of all, that's a San Diego Padres hat?
It is, yeah.
That's a great hat. I love that one. That's classic.
Well, I'll tell you my quick story behind it. Sorry for jumping in early, guys. I figured I'd try. You never know with technology. With me, I figured I might screw it up. But so when I got into baseball when I was like 7 or 8. I used to buy these handbooks of baseball, the complete handbook of baseball, back when you had to read things to figure things out. So I used to see these San Diego Padres colors and logos, and I love them. But I'm from Nova Scotia. You couldn't just buy a Padres hat, right? They didn't have that internet that we keep hearing about. So I always thought if I ever get a chance to buy a Padres hat, I will. And then they changed their logo and their color scheme about 15 times, and I always liked them. But then when they went back to this and I saw it, I said I have to treat myself. And I also have a vintage Canucks cap, and I wore it the other day, and somebody who works for True North said, you probably shouldn't wear that cap around the city. And I thought, yeah, you're right.
If it's vintage,
yeah,
it should be free. It should be, anybody can wear anything vintage, because sometimes the vintage ones are just so great. It's not, maybe a modern one. I don't know that you would necessarily get away with that. Not sure that you would walk around in a Leafs hat and live to tell the tale of it. But vintage, it should be fair game when it comes to vintage, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I agree, and I'm so stuck in the past that way. Most of the sweatshirts I have are old. Like there's a California Seals sweatshirt in there I was going to put on. I've always been that way for whatever reason. I mean, I love old stuff. So that, Drew, over your left shoulder, are those pins, that NHL plaque? Is that what's going on?
That is. Hang on, I'll pull it down.
I think I used to have. Yeah. See,
I got this for my bar mitzvah, Dan.
That is awesome.
The Nordiques one.
Nice. Yeah. So my son Clark and I, we were always Penguin fans because of Mario and then Sid. And the year they switched to that, Clark calls it the pigeon logo back in '93. That's after they won 2 cups, and then they switched to that logo. And Clark always says that's why they didn't win 3 in a row, because they got rid of the old classic logo. Sorry to screw things up there. I know it's not level now, but that's okay. I'll fix it after. And what you were saying about changing the logo, that's just science as far as I'm concerned. I mean, that's there's no question that's the case.
I'm with you.
Yeah, Dan, thank you for joining us bright and early. What time did you get back to the city after the flight to Columbus?
We get in at about, I got to my place at about 10 to 1. So it wasn't that bad at all. I mean, obviously we gained an hour coming back. So yeah, I've been on much later flights, so it wasn't bad at all.
Okay. Well, we definitely do appreciate you joining us. Obviously talk about the Winnipeg Jets. I mean, just take us sort of behind the scenes a little bit. These guys are flying so high, and not, both literally and their performance on the ice, 10-1, just the vibe. It must be something. It must be really, remarkable sort of to be around it, watching this kind of performance up close and personal and behind the scenes like you're able to do.
It is. I guess when you're on the other side of it, when I used to work in Montreal and they had some bad seasons there, I think you can feel it more on that end when the team just can't buy a win, and you're on a plane after another loss, and you're trying to find a good vibe somewhere, and they're just impossible to find. But I mean, even so, last night we're flying back, and you hear the odd bit of laughter from the back of the plane where the guys are, but it's there is that feeling, or maybe I'm imagining it, but I don't think that they haven't accomplished anything yet, even though they're playing so well. It's very professional, so they're not getting ahead of themselves that way. But I guess on the ice, sort of to take your question a little further, it looks to me like they're playing, well, they're playing free and they're playing loose. They're not uptight. Maybe they were a little bit against the Leafs on Monday, but to me, that's a part of the way I can tell they're having fun, by just the way they're being relentless and coming after teams in waves. So it's a lot, as I said, we've all been on the other side of these kind of performances where teams really struggle. So it's good to be around when you're 10-1.
Dan, what jumps out at you though the most? I said this to Drew earlier. Like, the fact is that this team has, the best power play in the NHL. They have the most goals for. They have the 4th best goals against. The best, obviously, the most wins. They're already to 20 points in 11 games. What kind of stands out for you when you're watching this team as kind of a remarkable stat?
A remarkable stat. Well, I guess it would be the power play so far, Dave. And like I said last night, no one expects them to operate at 40% this year, or probably even 30. But I mentioned it last night just as another point of reference. Last year it was 18.8%. And who knows where it's going to end up this year. But one thing, too, that kind of grabs me is it's not just the first unit that's scoring on the power play. So, and if you think about it, the second unit usually gets, what do they get? 30 seconds, 45 seconds, depending on if there's a stoppage or if you can get a change in there. So we talk about depth with this team, and there's depth on the power play, too. I mean, Pionk keeps piling up the points. it's there's contributions from everywhere. So, but if you're picking out a stat, I think that would have to be it. Also, because we talked so much of the narrative coming into this season was they have to be better on special teams, and so far so good.
Yeah, so far so good. Certainly is the case. Dan Robertson, Winnipeg Jets broadcaster, Jets on TSN, is our guest this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. You talk about the success of both units of the power play, Dan, and we were talking last week to Kelly Moore, of course, of CJOB, and Kelly was saying, both units are actually have amassed the same number of goals, same number of points, production wise has been similar. Do you think that sort of internal competition between the two units is helping to drive the success?
I think there is something to that. I was wondering that a few days ago when I was kind of looking at the numbers too. And I think that's great, right? I think there should always be guys pushing each other in one sense or another. So if you're on the second unit, if you're Cole Perfetti, you're doing everything you can. You're not out there thinking, okay, I've got to score so I can get pushed up to the first unit. But it's kind of a I think a sense of, look at us, we can really help too. So I think you see that bit of competition all over the place, whether or not it's stated outright or not. It happens. Like even yesterday, I was talking with Morgan Barron, and this is a little bit different, but he's on that fourth line, obviously, with Kupari and Iafallo, and they have one goal between the three of them. It's not to say that they haven't played well, because I think they have, and I thought they were good against last night. But it's a guy like Morgan or a guy like Alex, they're never going to be 25 goal scorers, but I'm sure that they're pushing in their own way to say, okay, I want to get more minutes, and even if that's just kind of an internal thing that drives them in a way. I mean, all of these guys, everybody in this league is ultra competitive. That's how you get there. But it's I think that's always part of a good team, no matter who you are. Even if you look at goaltending, obviously Comrie's never going to usurp Connor Hellebuck, but they're friendly toward each other. We know that, and they support each other. But if you're Comrie, you're in there and you're saying, okay, part of your makeup is I'm not going to get many starts. When I get one, I'm going to play well. And he did last night. He made a glove save on Monahan when the game was in question. He made a couple of big saves when he had to. So I think that is part of a good team, probably in every sport, really, when you think of it.
Well, we'll ask you about your relationship with Kevin and how that has developed through the years, but I'm not going to get there yet. Well, I'll ask you about that before. but just in terms of yesterday, and I want to kind of just ask you one more question about the game against Columbus, because of course Scott Arniel's return, and Aaron Portzline from The Athletic wrote a real good article about Scott kind of reassessing his life and making those adjustments. But did you get any sense that the team kind of wanted to win it for the coach? Because obviously they want to, you sometimes need to find a little bit of motivation, especially against an opponent you don't face very much. But do you think there was that little bit of extra factor that we know this is his return, we're off to a hot start, but we don't want to lay an egg in his return for the first time as a head coach?
Maybe, Dave, but I don't think so. And Mike McIntyre, I think it was Mike, asked Arnie yesterday about the fact about coming back, and he said, well, that was a long time ago. I've been back many times since, not obviously as a head coach. I don't think that's the case. Obviously, Arnie wouldn't bring it up, and I don't even, maybe this is bad to say, I don't know how many of those guys would know that he was the head coach in Columbus way back when. I mean, some of them, so you think of the younger guys, like if I go and ask, and maybe word got around, maybe that was mentioned by someone in the room, but I don't think so. But I have to read that article. I heard you guys reference it, I think last night as well. Yeah. But so I've got to do that. He's a great writer, and The Athletic, there's always good stuff there.
Yeah, it is absolutely a great article by our friend Aaron Portzline, now with The Athletic, formerly with the Columbus Dispatch. Dan, Neil Pionk has certainly been one of the headline stories of this Jets team so far this year. And I've coined the phrase that I find that he's playing with a little bit of controlled aggression. You see it last night, that stretch pass from Pionk behind his own net to the tape of Nino Niederreiter, setting up what ultimately ended up as the Appleton goal. Just the way he's jumping into the play, we saw it in Detroit when he that set play off the faceoff. To me, he's just a guy who's, one, healthy so far this year, and two, knows that how important he is to this team's success now almost more than ever, as he's trying to sort of continue to develop Dylan Samberg as his D partner on the second pairing.
It's funny, I asked Scott Arniel, I can't remember when, it would have been within the last week, if Pionk is being more aggressive offensively this year than ever. And he said, not necessarily. He said, I think he's just being rewarded for those things. And so I had Neil on as a first intermission guest last night, and you have to be ready with Neil. A lot of players will give you answers that long. Neil will give you an answer that long, which is fine. You have to be ready for a follow-up question. But I asked him the same thing, if he's being more aggressive offensively. He said, no, I'm playing the way I always do. I'm playing defense first and seeing what happens offensively. I don't agree with either one of them, Scott O'Neill or Neil Pionk. I think he's being more, he's up on the play more. And maybe it is a function of being healthy. I know a couple of years ago, he had a foot problem, right? Has been reported. So I think anytime you're not at 100%, then that gets in your head. We know that Neil he's got a real level of scrappiness to his game and some grit, which I like. And, like it or not, you go online enough, you see that he was a whipping boy to a certain extent. And I wouldn't be surprised if part of his makeup is like, okay, to hell with you guys. I'm healthy now, and I'm going to really lean into it here in the last year of my deal. So it's, 45 points the first year that he came from New York, or maybe the second year, and you thought that maybe you get greedy, he might be a 60-point guy, which might be out of the realm of possibility. But I like his reads. You remember, it was the first year I was here, Rick Bowness was trying to drive home the point of the defensemen have to get up into the rush. They have to add offense. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that kind of pushed him in that direction. I mean, he's always kind of had that way about him anyway, getting, between 30 and 35 points. But I like his reads. I like the fact that obviously these guys are encouraged to do that. And I think it's a league-wide trend too. I mean, you were watching last night, Werenski was up there, and he's kind of got carte blanche anyway because of the player he is. I like it. Kevin made a good point. One of our recent broadcasts, he said, it used to be if a defenseman got up there on the rush, as soon as the play died or looked like it might die, you see the guy hightailing it back to his own line. Now they're encouraged to stay in there by and large, which I like. But it has been fun to watch Neil. And if you're right, that's a good point about the long pass that he got through to Niederreiter, which ultimately helped set up the Appleton goal. So he's been really fun to watch so far this year and is playing well on his own end.
Well, you mentioned the stepping up. I mean, Dylan Sandberg I think that was the second Ehlers goal last night. Same thing. That looks like a dead play. That looks like a play where the defender should be backing off. Instead, he steps up at the blue line. He breaks up the clearing attempt, and a couple seconds later, it ends up in the back of the net. So you can just see the aggressive mentality, or the again, I don't want to use the same terminology, but you can see how that it seems to be permeating the team and everything that they're thinking about when it comes to back checking to become offense. I mean, the Kyle Connor goal, how many games ago was that? Or not the Kyle Connor goal, but where he makes the play at the offensive blue line, keeps the puck in, steals the puck. I think that was against St. Louis, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right.
You can see it, top to bottom, how it's translating to goals for this team so far.
I agree, and I think if you're a defenseman, that has to be fun to play in, right? I mean, anybody who's ever put on a pair of skates and had a stick in their hand wanted to score goals. You want to be part of the offense. I don't care if you're Craig Ludwig or the most defensive defenseman ever. That you want to be a part of it, and that's just the defense. But I think you're making a good point about Kyle and other Jets too coming back. Like after the game in Detroit, Arneal said he made a point to bring up the fact that I think it was at 6-2 at one time, and Connor is flying back on the back check. And so I asked him before the game yesterday. I said, Is that new? And he said, no. He said he's always been that way. Maybe not particularly strong in his own end, but he'll fly back on the back check. And that we've seen that. So it's cliche. Good defense leads to good offense. But I think it's got to be fun to play in because it's fun to watch right now. Like this team they're relentless, and it's been a lot of laughs to watch them go to work every night.
Dan, sticking with Kyle Connor, because he's the player who, he's just been phenomenal this season. He's been 11 games, 11 straight, a point within at least 1 point in each one of those games for the Jets. Named the second star of the month, only the third Jets player to ever be named a star of the month, alongside Connor Hellebuck and Patrick Laine. But from your point of view, is there something different? Like, he was off to a ridiculously good start, then obviously had that injury in Anaheim. But from your perspective, when he came back, I'm not saying he was tentative, but he just didn't necessarily look like the same Kyle Connor. He looks like the same Kyle Connor now and more this year. What are you seeing up close and personal?
Yeah, I don't know if it's just his game it's gone to a different level. I'm not saying that he's never been hungry to track down pucks before, or he's never given that second effort, but I think you see it now more than ever. Like I can't list them, but I think we can all think of plays where it looked like the other team was getting out of the zone, and he's able to kill the play before it gets out, and it's led to scoring chances and goals. Like I know we always think about his remarkable shot and his speed, and for good reason. They're both tremendous parts of his makeup. But to me, he's hunting down loose pucks, and he's a half a step quicker than the opposition usually to get on those loose pucks. So maybe it's just a matter of he's a little hungrier right now. We'll try and talk with him and see what he says about the whole thing. But he is on his toes, as they say, and he's been fun to watch.
Coming into the season, Dan Robertson, TSN on Jets, or Jets on TSN, pardon me, broadcaster, is our guest Saturday morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, brought to you by Play Now. Coming into the season, there was a lot of questions about that third pairing for the Winnipeg Jets on the back end. The injury to Ville Heinola, that was sort of a cast a pall over the start of training camp, and we don't know when Ville is going to be back, but we know he's back skating. Hayden Fleury got the first shot. Logan Stanley has stepped up recently, but the solidifying force, I think, on the back end has been Colin Miller, a guy that I think we were all surprised to see him re-sign with the Jets after he wasn't really used after they acquired him from New Jersey last year. Just how important to the consistency of that third pair has Colin Miller been from your perspective?
Well, very, and you bring up good points. I was wondering if you guys feel the same. I mean, it was almost like when he came in last year, he was a forgotten guy, and basically he was insurance, right? If somebody got injured on the blue line, and that's maybe a terrible way to put it, but that seemed to be the way that it was, like a guy nearing the end of his career, maybe. Not that he's old or anything, but I think he's 31 now, and he's, I don't want to use the term bounced around. He's played for a number of different teams, but he's a lot better than I thought he was. Not just the fact that he can really hammer the puck, but like Arneal said not long ago, I really haven't noticed him a lot. And he said, and I mean that in a good way. So I think that's what you want, right? If you're in your third pairing, he's working with Stanley, who's not young, so to speak, but he doesn't have that many games under his belt yet. So he's a solidifying force back there. And he's had to play with Fleury, who's what is he? I guess 27, 28 now. Still hasn't played a whole lot of games, and at some point maybe he'll get a chance to play with Heinola. I would just think that to have somebody like that it's low maintenance. If you're the defensive coach, or if you're Scott Arneal, just to know that if you put him out there, you're going to get a good performance more often than not. And it's fun. When he gets a chance to crank it up, he can really blast the puck too. So that's kind of a kick to see him shoot when he gets an opportunity.
Well, you bring up, low maintenance. There was a former coach, as we all know, who once used the term "coach's porn" in describing Dylan DeMello. That, of course, I think you know who that was.
I actually don't.
Oh, it was Paul. It was Maurice.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. When the Jets acquired Dylan DeMello from Ottawa all those years ago, he described him as coach's porn for his game, because he's so low maintenance and he's just in the right spots and he doesn't have to think about him really. And it seems like Colin Miller has been that, maybe not in the same terminology. I don't think Scott Arneal would necessarily use that same turn of phrase, but he's sort of been that way for the Jets so far this year on the back end.
He has, and Dave is sort of like podcast porn for you guys, right? He's going to be there night after night and day after day, and the steadying force on the show.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, Dan.
Time to pull the plug on this whole show then. Yeah. In that case.
Well, have a good weekend, everybody.
Yeah, and he's out. Dan, one of the things that we talked about, and I thought we talked about it at the beginning of the season, but seeing it more, is the benefit the Jets are getting from so many guys in the final year of a contract. It just seems like, whether it's intentional or not, these guys are all performing. You've got Neil Pionk, Nikolai Ehlers, Mason Appleton, Vlad Mesnikov. So from your point of view, are you you think that, how much of a factor do you think that is? Like, all these guys wanting, this is their opportunity really to collect. If you're the Jets, do you just accept it and just say, thank you, we'll take this for this year? Because it's going to make things difficult when you're trying to plan, as we talked about before you jumped on with us, that idea of who are you going to sign? Who are you going to try and who can maybe be replaced from the Moose that sort of thing?
Well, I actually heard you guys talking about that before I came on, and I would like to discuss it. I don't think it's a factor. Okay, maybe in the off season you're thinking, it's my last year, I've got to work a little bit harder. And I'm not saying that you're implying this, but I don't think on a nightly basis Nikolai Ehlers is thinking, okay, my contract's coming up, I've got to go get a hat trick today. You know what I mean? Maybe it's there subconsciously, right, on some level. And I'm not saying that guys, I mean, we all think about our contracts and we all think about money, but I don't think it's a factor. And, it's maybe if I knew players well enough to actually get the truth out of them, maybe I would ask, but I don't know. As I said, I don't have any doubt when the summer comes along, that's really, you're going to dig in and you want to put your best foot forward. But I think these guys always want to do that. So maybe I'm off base, but I've always kind of thought that.
Yeah, Dan Robertson, our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show on this Saturday morning. Dan, the Tampa Bay Lightning come to town tomorrow. Always exciting when they come in. Maybe not the same standard that they had when they were the Stanley Cup champion Tampa Bay Lightning, but there's still the talent oozing off the page. Nikita Kucherov up to an absolutely ridiculous start to the season, Kucherov-esque, if you will, given how he's been doing it year in and year out. From the Jets' perspective, are you expecting Scott Arniel alluded to maybe changing the lineup a little bit? Seems like tomorrow off the road trip might be an afternoon game, might be an opportunity to get some of those guys who haven't played yet back into the lineup for keep their legs fresh.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I was thinking that last night, Kevin and I were talking about it on the way back, but so the one change that he did make, or one of the changes he did make a few games ago, was to put David Gustafsson in for Rasmus Kupari. And maybe I'm a Kupari apologist. I want to see him do well. I thought he skated really well last night. Like, you could see it was 6-2, and he had a chance and he missed, and he smashed his stick off the boards. Like, this kid is hungry. So I don't know if it's there. I mean, you've got to do it at some point, make a change, I think, to keep guys engaged. We still haven't seen Dylan Conklin. So I don't know that I don't think you're going to take out Miller to put him in. Nothing against Dylan, and I think too, if you take out Stanley and put in Fleury, are people like, okay, well, stay with that? Does it start a controversy? Because we know that Logan takes a lot of heat. So I don't know. I'm sure that most coaches are the same. The old, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of thing. Do you wait until there's a loss to do that? Do you wait until we go back on the road, which is still 4 games away, that horrific stretch that the Jets are going to have? Do we see it there and then? But they played so well last night. I don't think it's going to happen. But I don't know. As I said, I think you have to make a change at some point to keep everybody engaged and fresh.
Dan, what are you seeing from Adam Lowry in his second season as a captain? He spoke about it. I don't remember when, but he spoke about it sometime either this summer, maybe during the captain's meetings, or maybe during training camp. But he just talked about how it was so easy for him last year because they got off to such a good start that there wasn't really anything he needed to be involved with. Well, similarly, they're off to a ridiculous, even a better start than they were last year. But from your vision of, being around the team all the time, what have you seen from him in terms of his adaptation as being a captain, or if any?
Yeah, I think more of the same, Dave. Last year, Arniel said, and I don't want to get it wrong, but something to the effect that a lot of guys, when they're named captain, they almost feel they have to change their game or change the way they are around their teammates, maybe be more vocal and that sort of thing. And he said, he's not done that, and he's not had to do that. He's just being Adam. So he's centering as we know, an excellent third line that's able to grind down teams offensively and play very well defensively. It's pretty neat. Like, anybody who's interacted with Adam on any level knows what kind of a guy he is. He's one of the nicest people that you're going to meet, and down to earth. And I think he kind of commands respect just by who he is and the career that he's carved out over time. I mean, he's never going to be a high point producer, but he's an excellent player, and we know that. So I don't think it's changed since the C's been on his jersey. And let's give the Jets organization credit for doing that. I think it's made a difference. I mean, from everybody I talk with and from what I can see, but I think he's just been himself, and I think that's more than enough as captain of the Jets.
Does that Dan, does that speak to how this team is being driven by the players in the room? I mean, there's the old adage, the best teams are player driven, good teams are coach driven, bad teams have nobody driving them. Is that just sort of speak to what it seems like this room is really driving itself, at least early on this year and throughout a lot of the regular season last year?
I would say so. We knew the word when Adam was captain. It was that they didn't just want him to be a leader, and you can't just have one leader. I mean, everybody has to kind of lead in their own way, but there's enough veteran presence and a group of guys, mostly have been together for a long time, that is, I believe it is room driven. And, it's like any other room. They have some guys who are vocal and speak up. Look at a guy like Josh Morrissey. Josh, I think is, he's a pretty soft spoken guy, but the sort of guy that I think if something has to be said in the room, he'll say it and people will listen. But when you look at how he engages on the ice night in, night out, he's someone that, if you're a defenseman, he's someone you want to look up to. It's just one example. I think there's a lot of examples in that room. So I think it's best when the leadership group is a big one. And I think that's what we're seeing here in the last couple of years. And they haven't, since Adams become captain, trying to piece it all together. So the year they didn't have a captain, that's the year that they had the great start until January, and then they kind of started to tumble. Well, if they start to tumble like that again this year, maybe that whole leadership group will be tested to some extent. But it looks pretty good from what I can tell right now.
Dan, we got to ask about your time here in Winnipeg. You're a Manitoban almost. I mean, you've spent some time here. What?
Not almost.
Well, I mean, you got to really sit down roots.
Yeah, look at the Winnipegs never look better in the. We
got to be careful though, because if Dan says something, his phone is going to explode again. But Dan, I like that when you're doing the thumbs up, because it was good, because it's subliminally telling our audience to make sure they hit the thumbs up. So I appreciated whatever your phone did to send that message to our audience to remind them of that. But just in terms of your journey, your time here in Winnipeg, what I mean, again, it's only a few years now, but just from your perspective, how have you grown to appreciate the market, and also your relationship with Kevin? Because folks take it for granted. I mean, I've done color with Daniel Fink, who's going to join us a little bit. It's not easy to just develop chemistry. You have to work on it. So from that perspective as well, how has that kind of grown between the two of you?
Well, I'll go with the second part first. This is my third year on the job, and my first year was kind of hectic. I didn't know until really late that I was going to actually have the job. And when I flew here first to look at training camp and just get assimilated and do some exhibition games. And when I landed, Kevin picked me up at the airport and he drove me to the Hockey for All Center for practice. And I think halfway there, I thought, this is great. We're going to get along, because the last thing you want to do is be paired with somebody that you don't like, because it's hell. It's actually never happened to me, but it can't be good. So I gave the thumbs up, you give the thumbs down there. So we have a lot of fun, but it's also, we talk about broadcasting too. And I mean, even on the plane last night, I was saying, I'm sorry if I did this or I stepped on your toes. Like, we have those conversations back and forth as well. And with our producer, Kevin Pratt, who's a great guy, and he's, we all get along really well. So it honestly, not to get sappy, but I don't have family here. I just kind of came out alone. And so to have somebody like that as a friend, he lives a couple of floors down, it's been great. And then over time, I get to know, guys like you and people around the rink. So that's been great. When I was applying for this job, when I thought I might get it, I had some people say to me, I remember Dave Poulin said, "You're going to love it." He said, "The people are really nice. The staff, it's a great atmosphere." And it is. And I mean, I would never want to go somewhere where hockey wasn't a huge thing. I mean, you're going to get that in any Canadian market, but I'm from Nova Scotia, and I kind of always, when I meet people, get that sort of similar feeling that people are warm. Like I could be in the grocery store, and it's really funny. Someone will come up and they don't even sometimes say hi. They just say, "What's wrong with the Jets right now?" Or they'll just go into a hockey conversation. I think that's great. So it's been interesting. And Dave, as you know, I've tried to see a big part of the province. Dave helped me, folks, with I went camping. I camped a lot this summer, and I said to Dave, I might want to go here, and he well, he drew me a roadmap and gave me all the hints. So it's been awesome. And I like the fact too that, and I know it's this way in other markets, but it's not just Winnipeg, obviously, that love the Jets. And I think that's cool. Our viewership goes into Saskatchewan and up north into northwestern Ontario. So it's been a good career choice for me. So it's just, life goes by so fast. It's my third year. So it's funny how that happens, but we're all in the same boat that way.
The time certainly does fly. Last one for you, Dan, then we'll let you get on with your Saturday morning. The offseason mantra for this Winnipeg Jets team was everybody needed to give 10% more. They didn't like how the season ended for a second consecutive year. 10% more was the offseason. How do you go home? How do you improve by 10%? Are we seeing that sort of manifest itself through this first 11 games, that mindset that they knew that how the season ended is not going to be sufficient? Regular season success is great, but the playoffs is where legends are born. Is that sort of that 10% mantra really, taking shape so far early this year?
I guess you'd have to say yes. I don't know if guys, that's probably a good question when I get into the room the next time after practice. Ask one of the leaders that question. But what you're saying makes sense. And it's also what you're saying is, I think we all have to we have to appreciate what they're doing right now. But at the same time, it's, when that first round comes around, there's going to be a hell of a lot of pressure right, because of the way the last two seasons have ended. And I mean, there's everything about what are they going to do when the trade deadline comes. Before that, will they make another, send another first rounder somewhere for a second line center or a defenseman? And those are questions to be answered. But I guess part of it may be the buy-in. And sometimes I hate that term because it's overused, but I think that's what we're seeing right now. So maybe part of that 10% better is to really be invested in what they're trying to do as a team, because, and I referenced this earlier, there's so much fun to watch for a lot of different reasons. And I heard you guys say earlier, I'm not sure which one of you said, and I'm sorry, but you said that they're connected. And they are. That was you, Dave. Okay, there you go. But they are.
He said one smart thing.
I take credit immediately.
Well, that's fair. But they are, aren't they? They're connected between the D and the forwards, with the forwards, hustling back and helping break the puck out. Rudimentary stuff, but they're doing it. So maybe that's it. Maybe that's the big part of it. So it's. I sound like I'm in Jets marketing, but it's, you know what? I'm hoping it's going to be a big crowd tomorrow, because Tampa comes, like you said, they're not quite the same team they've been, but it's going to be a tough test, but I think they'll pass these tests. So it's just fun to be around right now.
It is. It's fun to be around. It's fun to watch. It's fun for everybody. Dan Robertson, he's going to have the call tomorrow with Kevin Sawyer on the Jets on TSN broadcast. 2:00 puck drop. 1:30 start time. Pregame show.
1:30 pregame show. Yeah, but they don't pay me any extra when we do the pregame, so I need you as my agent.
That's okay. Sarah does all the work on the pregame show anyways, so yeah, that's fine. You don't deserve any more. Dan, thank you, buddy. We appreciate this.
Harsh, Dan. I'll be your agent. Don't worry. Forget about
Drew. Thanks, Dave. Be careful. Mind that fire. Don't let that get out of control.
I won't. I'll keep it going.
Thanks. Good to talk with you.
Likewise, Thanks, Dan. Take care. Have a great Saturday. Dan Robertson joining us this morning. Oh, that's just great. That's always such fun to catch up with Dan Robertson. Thrilled that he was able to make the time to join us this morning. So just a lot of fun and great insight, of course, into the Winnipeg Jets.
I just don't know though. I wish all of our guests could send subliminal messages to our audience. Smash the likes,
fireworks for my favorite one.
The fireworks are great because all of a sudden, I'm like, where's Dan and why is he turned into one giant firework?
Yeah.
But the subliminal messaging to the audience, and now I'm sure we're almost 400 people in the chat right now, which means we should have probably close to 400 likes, because I know everybody respects Dan and wants him to listen to what he says.
That's right. And if there's a fireworks button, you can also smash the fireworks button, but I'm pretty sure there isn't. How's that? Commercial-free hour number 1, which means we got to pay some bills. We'll come back with more Jets talk. And, of course, Daniel Fink joins us at the bottom of hour number 2. It's a day full of Dans, a day full of Ds. Drew, Dave, Dan, other Dan, lots more to come. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Don't go anywhere on this Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk with you. Daniel Fink set to join us at the bottom of the hour to talk about the Manitoba Moose. They're in action later on this afternoon. They dropped last night's game to the Milwaukee Admirals on home ice. We'll talk to Dan about the start to the Moose season. And Dave and Dan will do most of the conversation, and I'll sit here and look as handsome as I usually do. Great interview with Dan Robertson. That was a lot of fun. Always great to catch up with him. Another going to be a fun atmosphere tomorrow afternoon. The Jets and the Lightning do battle. The Jets look to feel better about the performance on home ice. The only blemish so far against the team that they lost to last Monday. I don't want to mention their name because it makes my skin boil a little bit. So we'll just say the Jets hope for a better result tomorrow against the Lightning. I'll be in attendance with the family, so they better perform well because my kids will not stand for poor performances. Let me tell you that, Dave Minuk.
Well, I think your kids are right to demand better from their parents and better from their hockey team. So,
parent, Laura does a pretty good job. Parent is who they need to demand better from. But
sure,
also
I tried to let you sidle beside Laura and you ride her coattails like you usually do. But no, that was great with Dan, and that's why I like having the broadcasters on, because they have an inside look. Dan travels with the team, so it's great for us to kind of get his insight and. Look, we've I saw the comment in the chat. We've been very fortunate, to go.
You talk for a second. This is driving me crazy. It's driving people crazy. I'm going to try and adjust this.
That's fine. That's good. But the comment in the chat that I don't know where it is exactly right now, but talking about how Winnipeg's been spoiled because we had years of, I guess we had 11 years of Dennis Bayak, and now going on year 3 of Dan Robertson, and so it's been great. And you can see Dan. You can see his evolution, from his play calling now, and I do enjoy the way he calls games. So it's been real good, and yeah, it's been a lot of fun to get to know him, and he's embraced our province, and that's he was talking about a little bit, and he's asked,
hang on, where did you send him? That's what I want to know. Where did you send him? You had to draw him a map and everything. What is this, the Marauders map from Harry Potter? People need to know where you sent Dan Robertson.
Well, he had some time between the start of camp, so he went down to Riding Mountain National Park. So I gave him some insight into some hot spots around Riding Mountain to try and enjoy. And like I said, he's been he does that, and he's been doing, goes to Birdsell Park and that sort of thing. And he's just been getting out and about, exploring MB and becoming, someone who's enjoying our province and some of the things that we take for granted that are in our own backyard.
Well, how Manitoba Tourism hasn't hired you as an influencer just yet, I can't quite figure out.
I kind of agree with you in that regard. Like I look at some of these influencers, I'm like, who are these people? Like they have to be told where to go. I know where to go. Or if I don't, I ask people. But then, like the Dauphin Rail Museum, who usually has the illegal curve hockey show.
Usually the Dauphin Rail Museum.
There you go. But I'm just saying that there you go. So when you're in Dauphin, just north of Riding Mountain National Park, you go check out the Dauphin Rail Museum. And that's something Illegal Curve knows. I don't know if any of these influencers would know that.
Okay, we'll move off the Dave ranting about influencers segment of the show, because I didn't have that in the show plan, let me tell you. The Jets competition is going to get more difficult over the rest of this month. I mean, we knew that it was a soft start to the season. With a lot of teams that were not playoff teams, that were not going to be playoff teams, had no hope of being playoff teams, and the Jets, to their credit, did a number against those teams. They made the hay that they should have made, and then it steps up starting on Sunday against the Tampa Bay Lightning. You have 4 in a row. 3 of the next 4 are all against division opponents. And the Tampa Bay Lightning themselves, of course, are no slouch. Then next week you go out on the road. You got both Florida teams and the Rangers. You come home for a one-off against the Panthers, and then you got 5 more on the road. So the month of November, to me, is going to be certainly a step up in competition for the Winnipeg Jets. But I also think that it's one that they are excited for, because you have to know, again, anytime players say they don't hear things, they don't read things, BS. They hear things and they read things because they're human. They can't possibly go that deep into off the grid to avoid it all entirely. But that they're hearing people say, yes, great start, but who have you played? Who have you beaten? You've played against the flotsam of the NHL, and you've done a number against them, and credit for that. But let's see you against some of your division rivals. Let's see you step up against some of the bigger teams. That's, the next, 4, 7, 10, 13 games this month. The remaining 13 games this month are going to be a significant test for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, the strength of schedule is going to pick up, but like we said, the Jets have done everything they needed to do to take advantage of the schedule the way they did. And in your wildest dreams, in anyone's wildest dreams, 0% of people thought the Jets were going to have 10 wins in 11 games.
Of course.
Nobody did. And with good reason. It just doesn't happen. So they've done what they needed to do in the early part of the schedule. They've maintained health, which is a good thing, of course. And now it's going to get more compacted and more difficult. But I think I agree with you in the sense that the team is playing well. They're playing good hockey. And I don't know that they necessarily care who their opponent is, because what they're not doing this year, which we saw last year and we've seen in previous years, they're not playing down to their opponents, right? They didn't play down to Detroit and they demolished them. They didn't play down to Columbus, who had been playing good hockey, as we talked about, 3-0-1 in their last 4 coming into last night's game, I believe, and they demolished them. So you're handling the teams that you need to handle in a way that you should handle those teams. Easier said than done. You still have to do it. And none of these guys will ever say, well, San Jose stinks, so of course we're going to beat San Jose, even though despite the fact that they had trouble with San Jose so many times last year. But what we're not seeing is that sort of malaise impact the team. They're playing their game regardless of opponent, I think is probably the best way to phrase it, Drew. And I think,
go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, and to me, if kind of like, why would you get out of this? Why would you get away from that structure? Because you've won almost, you're at a 9-10 winning percentage. So it's no one is going to freelance. Nobody's going to say, well, you know what? We've been doing this for 11 games. We've had almost perfect success. Let's try something differently. You're not. You're just going to keep doing it. And look, if teams stymie you, if teams start to figure out ways to beat your system, well, then you need to adapt accordingly and adjust. But to me right now, I don't know that the opponent is going to matter I don't get me wrong. I'm not going to say that we're going to be here and the Jets are going to be, 20-2 or something like that. Although wouldn't that be something if I could go back and watch this clip and say, see, I told you, but I would only clip the part when I would cleave out the part where I said, I don't know that it's going to be. And I would just say, look, the Jets are going to be 20-2.
It's clever editing is what I believe is
the
what
marvels
that's
of
called.
editing. But I'm just saying that I just think that this Jets team, I'm not calling them a juggernaut. I'm just saying I just like the brand of hockey they're playing.
Right.
And I think if they can keep that consistent nature, then what we're going to see is a team that doesn't matter if you're going against Tampa Bay or, Anaheim, you're going to see the same game from them. And most likely, more often than not, that outcome is going to be a win for the Winnipeg Jets.
Well, to your point, the MO has been well established. They know how they want their game to look. They know how they want to succeed, how they need to play. And they're not always going to be able to execute it to the level that they want because, one, they have good opponents who are going to try and counteract that. And two, they're human and not everything is going to go well on a night in, night out basis, as we saw last Monday when they just couldn't do anything successfully, except for the power play. That was the only thing that was clicking, and it was clicking to that ridiculous rate. But, to your point, they didn't play down to their opponent. They took care of business by playing at that high level. And that same high level is what they need to play at against their upcoming, step up in competition. And I think that they know that. I think that they believe that is an accurate is an accurate way to move forward. To gain success on a longer term basis rather than the short term 1 month of success that they've had so far.
Yeah, the only other thing I would point out, Drew, is that this team still hasn't played a back-to-back and won't play a back-to-back till November 21st and 22nd, I believe, or 22nd and 23rd against Pittsburgh on the road against Pittsburgh and Nashville. So, even if the competition has moved up, the schedule isn't onerous. It isn't as if they're playing games back-to-back, right? You play those, two once
one back-to-back this month. It's Pittsburgh on the Friday. We're going to be at Boston Pizza, and then Nashville on the next day on the Saturday. So, that's the one back-to-back. Even though it's a difficult schedule and it's every second night, it is just the one back-to-back involved.
That's right. So I'm just saying that from that point of view, that even if it's not like you can't practice the next day if there's something you need to work on. They still have that ability. They're still going to be able to, and obviously they're going to have recovery days built into that. But at the end of the day, between Dallas and New York, there's a few days. Between Florida and coming back and facing Florida, there's a few days. And then, going back out on the road, you've got a couple. So I just say the competition, the schedule isn't getting more difficult right now. Yeah. I think the competition, of course, is. But I think that if you're the Winnipeg Jets, you're relishing the opportunity to keep this going. Why wouldn't you?
You know what I hate about the schedule? This is a bit of it's going to be a bit of an off-topic rant. You got the 3 games out east. New York on the Tuesday, Tampa on the Thursday, and then Florida on the Saturday. Okay. Then, for what reason I cannot articulate, aside from just optics, I think, they fly the Jets all the way back home to Winnipeg to play 1 game at home against the Florida Panthers, and then they fly them all the way back out to Pittsburgh for a one-off against the Penguins, and then they begin to make their way back west. It just seems like that kind of scheduling, I'm going to call it a glitch, because maybe it is deliberate. I don't know. Maybe they don't want a team playing, 8 consecutive road games, and that's certainly a long road trip. So I understand that thought process. But to go out east, fly all the way back home, because it's not a quick flight from Miami or Sunrise, Florida, back to Winnipeg, and then you go fly back to Pittsburgh, and admittedly, there's a few days in between those games. To me, it's just a bizarre sort of scheduling setup that you just come home for that one-off, and you fly all those miles. It seems like there's a better way than that to be the schedule, for this coming November.
Sure, but first class accommodations, great meals, great hotels. Nobody's heart is going to bleed. Look, I agree with you. The anomalies are a little bit bizarre, and the one-offs coming, even the road trip and then coming home for one against Toronto and then going back out on the road. It's a little bit bizarre, but it's Winnipeg, and we're isolated, and we don't have a ton of, to me, I always think it's unusual in the sense that if if you're playing the Rangers, I always anticipate they're going to be playing the Devils and the Islanders as kind of that tri-state.
Right. They call that the Mindell bachelor party trip because that's what I did on my bachelor party.
That's true. That's true.
Thursday, it was a Thursday against the Islanders, Saturday against New Jersey, and then Sunday against the Rangers.
That's right. So that's the only thing I would have thought would have been normal would be if you're playing in New York,
right?
Then you'd play the Devils and you'd also play the Islanders. I mean, traditionally that's what we've seen, I believe. But at the end of the day, it is what it is. And like I said, you don't have a back-to-back till the third week of November throughout the course of your schedule. So that's pretty darn good from a Winnipeg perspective. And like I said, they're going to get a chance to keep playing this brand of hockey against Tampa, against Utah, against Colorado. Is it on Thursday?
Colorado on Thursday, and then Dallas on Saturday. The game that was moved because of the conflict with the Bombers Western Final next Saturday at 5:30. The Jets Stars game is now 2:00 on Saturday instead. Let me ask you this: what's that?
2 games. Anyways, go on. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was going to say they did that with it. They moved the Dallas game up, and then they moved one other game back.
Detroit game. They moved the Detroit game in January from 2:00 to 6:00. So they just sort of swapped the start times so that the Jets aren't out a Saturday night home game as a result of the switch.
Hold on, Drew. I got to get you think about. Don't lose your thought, but I like what this suggestion from Joe. He wants an off the rails with Drew Mindell, sponsored by Via Rail. I think that's a great idea, Joe. I think we'll have to approach Via and. Maybe we'll do that. Maybe we'll look, Drew, we were talking about filming a Legal Curve episode on a Saturday on the ice when, I talked to them.
The ice fishing shack, you mean?
Well, it's like a palace, but yeah, we were going to do that and have Paulie Edmonds show up in a snow machine and we'd be fishing and doing a whole show. So we're still in negotiations. We'll see if we can make that happen sometime in February. Although with these balmy temperatures, Drew, I don't anticipate that there's actually going to be any ice on the river because, we're keeping till, I think it's going to be 12 till next weekend at least, which is ridiculous. But and I'll never complain about that. I'm enjoying it. But at the same time, anyways, a little sidebar. Go ahead.
No, that was you going off the rails is what that was. I was going to ask you this Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by our friends at Play Now. I was going to ask you, are you anticipating any lineup changes? I asked Dan Robertson that about 30 minutes ago. Are you anticipating any lineup changes for the Jets and the Lightning tomorrow? Given that, Scott Arniel, only reason I bring it up is because Arniel himself alluded to, having to get guys back into the lineup that have been sitting for a while. Now, I don't expect that to mean Dylan Coghlan, but could you see a Hayden Fleury or a David Gustafson? What do you think is going to happen tomorrow against the Lightning?
Well, look, yesterday on the broadcast, David Gustafson was in the shot. So I was like, oh, is he playing? Because why is he, and sometimes coaches will do that. They'll have guys take the skate just so they'll, stay warm and they'll stay a little bit engaged, or maybe someone is dealing with something and they want to have Gustafson as an option. We don't know what it was because obviously we're not there to ask the question. The Jets are skating today at 12, or 12:30. Sorry, it was pushed back. It's at Hockey for All Center if anybody's going to go there. It was originally scheduled for noon. Now it's at 12:30. But yeah, if for me, I don't know. I don't know why you would mess with what's working. I'm all for the idea of keeping guys engaged,
right?
But at the same time, why you haven't wanted to adjust it? Sure, you can make a move. Don't get me wrong. Maybe put Hayden Fleury in for Logan Stanley. I don't think too many people are going to complain about that,
especially against Tampa. That's got a decent amount of foot speed with them.
That's right. So I could see that move being made, and the justification being you want to keep Hayden Fleury active, and you don't want to kind of waste him there. But Rasmus Kupari's look good, so I don't see David Gustafson coming in for him. Do I think there's a significant drop off? I don't.
Well, could you see Gustafson? Everyone assumes that if Gustafson comes in, it's Kupari who comes out. Could you foresee Gustafson coming in on the wing?
Oh, absolutely. None of these, as I said to you before, I don't think any of these guys are sitting there saying, well, I'm only a center. I'm not going to play wing. But what are you going to do? Are you going to take Morgan Barron out?
The
problem is Drew, that line.
They're all playing well. Is the problem?
Well. So again, it's a good problem to have. And look, I'm not a coach. I'm not going to, ask coaches a lot of questions. I'm not going to pretend to be one. But, that to me is a good question in terms of you want to keep guys engaged. Is practice not sufficient? Do they need to play games? Because you really need to break things up. Personally, I would suggest, other than seeing obviously Connor Hellebuck back in net against Tampa, I don't anticipate, other than maybe Fleury for Stanley. And like I said, if there's a potential injury situation, which is the reason why you'd maybe have David Gustafson coming back into the lineup and, like I said, taking warm-up skate. But I other than that, I really don't anticipate much in the way of change because, like I said, this team is working really well. And it's not like the fourth line was not good. They were very good in yesterday's game. So why would their reward for playing really well be to remove one of those guys from the lineup?
Let me ask you this. So on 32 Thoughts, Elliot Friedman's article on sportsnet.ca, an article, of course, linked on our website, illegalcurve.com, Elliot says the following about the Winnipeg Jets. Whenever Winnipeg thinks it has a chance, it adds. It adds to the roster. Watching the Jets blazing 9-1 start, now 10-1, the one thing that stands out is the size of their defense. You have to be mobile, you have to be skilled, but you have to be big. Recent Stanley Cup champions have had that in common. Blah, 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 blah. The Jets would be the smallest Stanley Cup champion defense since 2018, since the Washington Capitals. Do you think that paragraph, because Elliot writes these things with, he's got birdies in his ears telling him things. Do you think that paragraph is a bit of a tell, as you would say in poker language?
I mean, he didn't really say. It's funny because I posted it and I was like, he really didn't say anything. He's like, wow, the Jets.
Well, he pointed out that the Jets would be the smallest defense of a potential Stanley Cup contender / champion. And he's basically pointing out the Jets defense is smaller than recent successful teams going all the way back to 2018.
Sure. And I suspect that folks in this town don't want to remember 2017-18 because as good as it was, they probably know that
Washington beat Vegas that year after Vegas beat the Jets.
Right. And there's a good chance if the Jets can get through Vegas, I'm not saying that they automatically are defeating Washington, but they had a good chance to win that Stanley Cup. There's no doubt about it. That team was real good. And their defense was real big, right? You had Ben Sherratt, Dustin Byfuglien, Jacob Trouba, Josh Morrissey. Tyler Myers. Yeah. But big doesn't always translate. And obviously, we're not just talking about height. You want to talk about size. You want to talk about weight. That's really what big is, obviously. And that's what Friedman is referencing, not just height, of course. But ultimately, I mean, do I think it's an interesting thing to take note of? For sure. I think it's a opportunity for the Jets. I think the Jets, let's put it this way, as to paraphrase Kevin Cheveldayoff, you're always having conversations. And I think he is. I think some teams are going to be frustrated with where they are. And I think if one thing we've seen from Kevin Cheveldayoff is a willingness to, strike a little bit earlier. We know that, they didn't get
the All-Star break last year where they got Monahan.
Right. But who was it? Who got traded from Vancouver to Boston just before?
Elias Lindholm.
Elias Lindholm. Yeah. So the fact is that you had, Cheveldayoff ready to make a move then because he was in on Lindholm reportedly and then went with Sean Monahan. And we know how well that worked out. But yeah, Drew, I mean, it's a question of what are you going to do? Are you going to trade some more prospects? Are you going to trade another first round pick in order to augment this group? Like, I think you kind of have to, because to me, well, you don't want to sacrifice the future. First of all, I think the future is good right now. I mean, you look, and we'll talk about this when the show is about to end, the prospects in the system.
Yeah.
Prospects in the system are looking real good.
You need a bumper for that. We need some sort of ridiculous Minuk prospect bumper.
Possibly. I think after my Minuk's Minute one, I think I broke the internet. So I'm not so certain I have any more.
Me as a person.
Well, that's true. As loved it, you hated it. But anyways, I just think this is a team that, you kept Mark Scheifele, you kept Connor Hellebuck, you signed them to long-term deals. This was a team that is in it to win it. They're not in it to be a very good team. They're not in it to be a first round, second round team. At least they don't want to be. They've done what they need to do. They're going to add. I think there's no question they're going to add. Now, of course, there's a lot of question marks with respect to Nikolai Ehlers. But I think that this Jets team, we know it, Drew. Like if you could move everybody on the right side one level down or shift someone over, but if you could put Dylan DeMello with, Dylan Samberg or whatever you're going to do, and you have
if you add another solid defenseman is what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I was going to say the perfect guy for me is Mackenzie Weegar out of Calgary.
Sure.
But I'm just saying he's that ideal, that prototypical top pairing right side defenseman that, the Jets, They don't really have that. And again, don't get me wrong. I'm not maligning Dylan DeMello. I think he's been excellent, but I just don't know that, him and Morrissey are necessarily striking fear. I think Morrissey and like a Uyghur type, that's a lot more of a solid pairing in terms of a top pairing, a Stanley Cup contender. And that's what we've talked about. And then the other question, of course, is second line center. Is Vlad Nemestikov able to be sufficient, or is he better suited to be your fourth line center on a Stanley Cup contender? I think Vlad Nemestikov's a fourth line center. So, I mean, like that would be, the question mark is that 2C question mark and, first pairing right side defenseman pair question mark. Those have been the Jets question marks forever. Not forever, but for a long time. And those are the ones that remain. So yeah, I think the Friedman stuff is interesting. Yeah. And I think if I'm Kevin Cheveldayoff, I'm definitely looking. And we saw the other thing I would say is we saw the benefit of not waiting till the trade deadline to make the ads.
Sure.
That I think is also because Sean Monahan came in, got going right away. And I think there's a benefit of that extra month. Was it a month or 3 weeks before the trade deadline, whatever it was, Drew?
Yeah.
I think that to me was a huge benefit. So
I think so. I mean, if you just look at the productivity, Monahan was far more impactful on the Jets than Tyler Toffoli was. And I mean, we know Colin Miller never got a shot, which is, hindsight, I think clearly is showing was, and not even hindsight. I think people said at the time, he needed to have a shot.
We all kind of said that it was a little bit bizarre that you brought in a guy and not played him at all. And
right. And especially a guy who was, more than acquitted himself in his role with the Jets so far this year. Anyways, it's interesting because the trade cauldron is beginning to bubble up. We saw the trade. Liljegren went to see San Jose earlier this week. A guy who had fallen out of favor in Toronto. So we saw that trade. I think there was another trade that I'm just not thinking of off the top of my head earlier this week as well, or maybe late last week. But obviously teams are beginning to move. They're beginning to shake up situations that aren't quite working. So you wonder if the Jets might also be one of those teams. Wouldn't necessarily be their MO to do things particularly proactively, but stranger things have happened, and the Jets, off to a 10-1 start, might think that there's some lightning to catch, if they pardon the pun about the opponent tomorrow, but if they make a trade earlier rather than later this season. When we come back, we shift our focus to the Manitoba Moose, the Winnipeg Jets AHL affiliate. Daniel Fink, Moose broadcaster, he's going to join us for all the latest on some of those Jets players of the future who are banging at the glass ceiling trying to become NHL regulars, and how they're playing so far with the Moose this season. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Daniel Fink up next. Don't go anywhere. Saturday morning, Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal. Starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Bottom of hour number 2, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk with you on this Saturday morning. Of course, the Moose in action later on this afternoon. It's an afternoon game, right? Did I get that right?
Well, I mean, it's between you and Ezzy. I'm not going to sit there and I'm not going to quibble. No, it's a 6 o'clock start.
Okay, that's evening. That's Saturday evening game. There's no question about that. There's no quibble.
I was trying to, I know, but I was trying to make it nice to you because you got it wrong.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I was close, but
But force me to point it out. There you go.
No, that's fine. You can point out on this show. You can point out our errors and not have to feel apologetic about it. In fact, you can ridicule somebody for their errors.
I have to say,
perfectly fair game.
When Dan was talking about his relationship with Kevin, that set us up perfectly. Where he's like, "Yeah, you always want to enjoy the people you work with," and I'm like.
That was a good one. We all had a good chuckle about that. Dan Fink is set to join us, Moose broadcaster, coming up here momentarily on
a bit of a tech issue.
A tech issue.
Yeah.
Oh dear. Oh dear. The broadcaster himself is having a tech issue.
It's that his headphones are not working in our program for some reason. So
that's that is a tech issue. It's odd.
And we have no tech on file, so on staff. So it's I'm like. Manual reset.
Yeah, there you go. Have you turned off and turned on your computer? Yeah. In any event, we'll join him.
Told me hit the any key.
Yeah, it's getting a little finicky. Exactly. Dan will join us momentarily. We'll talk about the Moose. The Moose lost last night. Just sort of give quick recap of what happened last night. We'll talk about it with Dan, of course. But with Dan, we like to go more at the macro level to talk about the start to the season for the Moose generally. What happened last night against the Milwaukee Admirals team that I understand is playing some pretty good hockey as of late.
Yeah, they haven't lost. They've lost one game all season. That was the season opener back on October 11th. So they're 7 straight wins for the Moose Central Division rivals. And yesterday, the tale of the game was really, and I'm not going to pretend like I watched it in a sort of cursory manner, but I really, of course, was focused on the Jets because we had our show to do last night. But, if I had to put my finger on it, I'd say special teams. The special teams were very good for Milwaukee. They scored 3 goals on 4 power play opportunities. And that, the Moose did score a shorthanded goal. Actually, Jonathan Fielby got his feet moving. So that was one thing, but that's his first goal of the year. And, who looked good from what I saw was Chaz Lucius, the 2021 first rounder. And, we've talked about ice time management. I'm sure we'll talk about that with Daniel.
So maybe talk about that ice time management a little bit, because Lucius has been in and out of the lineup. Sort of load management, to the NBA term, is being employed by the Moose organization, the Jets organization, the True North organization, when it comes to getting this oft injured player sort of back up to speed.
Yeah, and he's recovering from the ankle surgery that he had last year, which really seemed to fix the idea being fixing a problem that had been a nagging one. And so from that perspective, they're feeling good. Look, the guy's got it. He's got talent. He's got size. He's a nice kid, and you can just tell he just wants to play hockey. He wants to be happy and healthy. He wants to play these games. There's no question about it. Unfortunately for him, and I've talked about it with Mark Morrison, the Moose head coach, this week during practice or after practice, is that they'd love it if they right now had a Friday, Sunday. They could be more likely to say, okay, we're going to play you. But because it's back to back, they just don't want to risk doing anything that's going to create a setback. So for now, and he said eventually they think that that'll be the plan, is that he will start to get into those back-to-back games. But I suspect it's once the Moose have started to play a little bit longer, play a little bit more consistently, and it's not just 2 games in a week. When they get up to playing on those Mondays and Wednesdays and Fridays throughout the course of the week, then Lucius will be more in the rhythm. But like I said, you can see it. He did it on the first Moose goal, the one scored by Nikita Chibrikov, where if you actually watch the sequence before the goal went in, like if you just watch the goal, you'd be like, okay, fine. He just kind of tried to stuff a puck. It went back to Chibrikov and it was a goal and he gets an assist. But if you actually watch the play, it was much more significant what he was able to do. But let's bring Daniel in. He can talk about it from a first-hand perspective.
There you go. Daniel Fink, Manitoba Moose broadcaster, joins us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Daniel, good to see you. How are things?
Good morning, gents. Sorry, I was having a couple of technical issues getting all my mics hooked up and things like that, but we're rolling now, so we can have a nice chat.
Okay, Dan, before we start, I have to ask you about this.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
How many people were fired immediately upon that video taking place?
In fact, we had to hire 6 more to handle Dave's makeup ahead of the shoot, so he's very, very high maintenance.
I know that part. I have no doubts whatsoever that he is high maintenance. But when he unveiled that, you got to give a guy a little bit of heads up. You got to give a guy a little bit of a warning, because when that was dropped on me, I was not in the right mindset to be prepared to have that infiltrate my life on a regular basis.
As somebody who was instrumental in making that happen and then got to watch the reactions in real time, no, I think it was handled perfectly.
You guys, brothers in arms, you and Minuk are, and the rest of us are just victims of your collaborations. In any event,
along for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. In any event, thank you for joining us this morning, working through the technical difficulties. I was asking Dave about last night's performance against the Admirals. He said that special teams was the bugaboo for the Manitoba Moose. Is that sort of a bit of a function of a young team? They have so many young players up front, trying to sort of understand the intricacies of a game and understand the intricacies of special teams, in particular, how one false step can lead to a puck behind your goaltender. Is that sort of a bit of the growing pains that we may be seeing from the Moose so far this season?
A little bit, maybe. I think you're seeing some guys that are elevating and changing roles within the organization as some of the Moose kind of key players in key situations moved on in the summer. And now some of those young guys, while they put up very good numbers last season, are being looked upon to be the guys. They aren't the ones that are rolling in and getting those points and picking up those along the way, but also being necessarily supported by some of those big guys that were doing a lot of the damage last season. Now they are those guys. They are the ones being relied upon in all those situations. So I think there's a bit of growth happening there. Special teams wise, the Moose penalty kill had been 16 of 17 leading into that game over the previous 5 games. So last night they gave up 3 power play goals. One of them was just kind of a weird bounce off of a face-off that ends up in the back of the net. Isn't really on your penalty kill, but the other 2, I think you saw a Milwaukee Admirals team that is very, very effective at working seam passes. The Moose maybe not quite active enough with their sticks to break some of those up, got scrambling around, and we saw just how dangerous this Milwaukee Admirals team can be when you give them opportunities, because the Moose only allowed 24 shots on goal last night. But the chances that were within those 24 shots on goal and the chances that didn't necessarily make their way onto the score sheet were pretty dangerous. So talking to Coach Eric Dubois just a few minutes ago, I think he's looking for the team to be a little sharper defensively come tonight.
And that's been one of the hallmarks of this group, Daniel, is that they've been able to bounce back from, a poor kind of first game or an unlucky first game or whatever the circumstances has been. So have you seen that resiliency? Of course, it's only 7 games into the season, but are you seeing this team kind of have that resiliency in their understanding of, need to be better in and adjusting? Well, we're obviously seeing it because they've done it a number of times. What have you seen from this group in that regard?
Yeah, I think we've seen, for the most part, the Moose be better in the second game against a team as they've kind of figured out how that team plays. You look at the Iowa series. Yes, they win both games. They score 6 goals the first time out, but they were arguably better in their 3-1 win at times, despite getting heavily outshot in that one. You look at the Grand Rapids series, and they only allowed 3 goals over that whole weekend. Unfortunately, came away with no points. That's not going to happen very often, but they were much better in the second game. You look at the Rockford set last weekend, much better in the second game. So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility to expect the same here for the Moose against the Admirals, though they certainly had stretches where they carried the play. The third period to close things out, they were very, very good. They cleaned their game up in the third, just struggled to generate offense. So I think you've seen a team that kind of builds, learns from its mistakes well, and makes adjustments. And that's certainly a hallmark of a good team. What you want is to not have to necessarily make those adjustments the second time out, and getting that jump on teams is something the Moose seem to be not necessarily struggling with, but developing right now.
Dan, 3 of the last cuts from Winnipeg Jets training camp: Chibrikov, Lambert, Salmonson. You look at the Moose scoring leaders: Chibrikov 7 points, Lambert 6 points, Salmonson 5 points. Are these guys driving the Manitoba Moose so far this season? And probably, I mean, if they are, I would assume that's what the organization wanted to see from the 3 of them when they were the late cuts from the Jets training camp.
I think much as our discussions went prior to the season, I think you're looking for those guys to take another step in the American Hockey League and become dominant players, move from being players that pick up points and produce to really driving the play and really being dangerous every time they're on the ice. And I think those players are still kind of figuring that out as it stands to be with the forwards for Salmonson. I mean, you're looking for him to kind of be that guy that grows throughout the season, learns the game on the smaller ice surface, and he's found some success on the power play, something that he hasn't had a lot of experience working on, and he's been able to quarterback that top unit for the Moose, and that's where 3 of his points have come from. In fact, the Moose have 3 power play goals. Lambert, Chibrikov, Salmonson are the ones in on those 3 goals. So when you consider that, the 5-on-5 can certainly start to build a little more for all those guys offensively, and of course key parts of the power play, so they're going to get their points there. So I think happy to see them off to good starts and up around that point per game pace, or right at it if you're Nikita Chibrikov. But I think there's still more to come, and that's the whole point of this exercise, right? The American Hockey League is about development, and those players are learning to take on bigger and more important, more focused roles while contributing at both ends of the ice, developing that 200-foot game. So, of course, there's always work to be done. And that holds true for a 38-year-old player in his last game in the National Hockey League. So the development is coming for those guys, and that's I think the whole point of them kind of getting this opportunity to try and take that next step here in the American Hockey League rather than facing the everyday meat grinder of the NHL.
Well, Daniel, I talked to Moose goalie coach Drew McIntyre this week about his tandem, and I didn't even realize this till Drew told us that, not this Drew, but Drew McIntyre.
No, the insightful Drew who knows anything, as opposed to dumbass Drew with the stupid mustache.
There you go. But Drew,
majestic mustache.
Thank you. Drew informed me that this was the youngest goalie tandem in the entire AHL, and we had a good chat, and it's on our YouTube and on the website illegalcurve.com. But from your perspective, what have you seen from Thomas Milic and Dominic DiVincentis? Because again, DiVincentis was supposed to be doing, if all would have been gone to plan, would have been the ECHL route. The Thomas Milic route, which would have been, going to the ECHL, playing with Norfolk, and then trying to get a shot up at the AHL. Well, life doesn't always come at you pretty, and sometimes opportunity presents itself, and he seems to have really thrived. And it's a small sample size. He's only played a few games, but he really seems to have thrived in this opportunity. And so I guess from your perspective, we're looking at these 2 guys, these 2 young guys who are really close, but are also pushing for that top spot. What are you seeing from them so far early in the season?
Yeah, I think they've acquitted themselves well, and they've given the Moose a chance to win pretty much every night that they've been in the net, whichever goaltender it's been. Of course, Milic's numbers have kind of taken the hits of being that first goalie up when the Moose haven't been great in those first games sometimes. So I think if you look at the balance of work, it's not like Thomas Milic has given up a bunch of soft goals or anything like that. It's very good chances that are finding the back of the net, where the Moose have been maybe a little bit better in front of Dominic DiVincentis, though he's been very, very solid, and he's actually ended up facing more rubber than Thomas Milic has, and the numbers have borne that out, and he's been very, very good. Hasn't allowed more than 2 goals yet through his first 3 starts in the American Hockey League. So you want to talk about taking an opportunity and running with it. Well, Dominic DiVincentis is your perfect example of that right now, as he has done exactly that. So he's been able to provide some solid goaltending for the Moose, and presumably he'll get another chance to strut his stuff here tonight against a very good team filled with dangerous snipers in the Milwaukee Admirals. So this might be his toughest test so far. So it should be interesting to see how, provided he does get the start here tonight, how he acquits himself against this Milwaukee team. But certainly maybe some nerves when you look at a team with the youngest goaltending tandem in the American Hockey League, the youngest tandem the Moose have ever put on the ice in their 25 seasons here, plus another 4 in St. John's. So it's a team that is relying on some very youthful goaltenders, but they've held the load well so far.
Yeah, they definitely have, Dan. But it's such an anomaly for really any team at any level of hockey to have that young of a tandem. what sort of steps is is Drew McIntyre, the goalie coach, taking to sort of insulate those two young goalies? Because it's early in the year, and this is going to become a grind as you get into games 30, 40, 50, 60. What sort of steps is he taking to sort of help the two young players get through that grind together?
Well, I think one thing that Drew does really well is he communicates well with his goaltenders, and he's always available to have that chat. And I think that might even be one of the most important functions of a goaltender coach in any situation, is that ability to sit down with your goalies, talk through things. It's such a mental position, and you talk about that grind. It's not just physical, it's mental. I mean, you go out there and the pressure of the game is on your shoulders every second of that 60 minutes, unless you get to run to the bench for a delayed penalty or something like that. But it's definitely a worrying position, and a lot of it comes down to the mental side of the game. So when you're able to have that relationship with your goaltenders and a tandem that works well together, I think that's huge for those goaltenders. And when you talk about insulating them, I think that also runs to the rest of the team. I mean, talking to the coaching staff, they acknowledge that they've got a couple of young goaltenders, and the team knows that as well, and they work hard to protect them. They're very strong in front of the net. They clear away rebounds well, and when you have two young goaltenders, you want to be there to support them. And I think the Moose have done a pretty good job of that so far as it stands, with those opportunities in front and in tight.
Well, one player we have to talk about is Chaz Lucius and his ice time management. And we've been talking about it with, of course, head coach Mark Morrison. But, Daniel, I don't think any player is putting probably more pressure. I mean, he's talked about how he's taking the pressure off of himself, but he just wants to have a good season. He wants to have a healthy season. Yeah. But from your point of view, what have you seen from this first rounder of the Jets in 2021? I mean, to me, I watch him in practice. He's smiling. He's fast. His shot looks good. And we're seeing it in games. We're seeing that more, that deceptiveness, I think, in him and that using that size. But you're there. You're watching him intently. What are you seeing from him so far early in the season?
Yeah, 3 games in now for Chaz Lucius, and he's been better in each one that he's played, and now has points in 2 straight appearances. There's a guy that has played 32 games in the American Hockey League. He has points in 17 of those games. He's got 20 points in 32 games. I mean, that is very impressive production for a young player who's been in and out of the lineup due to injuries. So when he's been in the lineup, he's produced, and he picked up another assist last night. Just a heady little bump play. It came off the wall. He knew he didn't have an angle to jam it into the side of the net, so he just kept it going back to Nikita Chibrikov, who had a much better look and, of course, scored. So here's a guy with a whole ton of skill. Important for him to kind of take it easy and work his way into the lineup, and the Moose and Jets being very, very careful with him. We'll see if maybe this is the weekend that he gets into a back-to-back situation, and if not, that's fine too. It's all about the process for Chaz Lucius, and making him have a healthy season that he's able to really kind of work on his game for the first time in a few seasons. So I'm sure the Moose would love to have him in every game because he makes the Moose better. He's a high-skilled player and certainly can produce. So we'll see how that continues to progress, but he's a guy you just can't help but cheer for because he's been through so much. He's worked so hard to get back to where he is right now, and you just hope that everything goes well for him.
We've spoken a lot about the young forwards for the Manitoba Moose, but they have that veteran presence up front as well. Guys like Mason Shaw, CJ Cease, Dominic Toninato, Axel Janssen-Fialbi. How are those sort of veteran players, either at the NHL or AHL level, sort of shepherding the young players through the season so far?
Well, you want to talk about lived experience that could be beneficial. I mean, I'd be curious to chat with Mason Shaw and see if he's had any talks with Chaz Lucius, because here's a guy who's been through numerous massive injuries that have taken him out for seasons at a time, and kind of the same time frame as well as Lucius. So some kind of shared experience there between those two. But you know what, those guys they provide consistency, and that's an important thing, especially in the American Hockey League, where consistency is kind of one of the key things that you're working on as a team and individually. So when you have those veterans that can come in and provide that consistency, be the same player every game, and be vocal in the room and try and help show guys the way, that's very important. Those are valuable roles throughout the team, and that's why you see AHL teams really going and finding those guys, and NHL teams spending the money to bring in some of these guys on whether it's 2-way or 1-way contracts to be those veteran presences for these young players.
Dan, I got to ask you, it's 25th anniversary of the Manitoba Moose in Winnipeg, 10th anniversary, 10th year they've been back since they moved to St. John's. You've been here a long time. What's it like this season, what kind of things do the Moose have in store for fans to kind of celebrate 25 years of AHL hockey in Manitoba, or I guess IHL and AHL hockey in Manitoba?
Yeah, it's funny. I was talking to Colin Peterson and Raquel Payne, kind of my cohorts with the Moose, and when the Moose celebrated their 20th season back in 2019, I mean, I'd been here for a few seasons. They'd been here for a couple seasons less, and it just seems to hit a little differently talking to them now that we've been here for myself 9 years, or 7 or 6 years for them, and now all of a sudden we're a part of that history. I mean, we can look back and say, well, back 10 years ago. So it's kind of a different perspective. And I think in some ways we appreciate more that the 25 seasons, it's great to celebrate the on-ice accomplishments and the accomplishments of alumni that have moved on to the National Hockey League, of which there are many and some very impressive ones at that. But you can celebrate the people too. I mean, there are people in this organization who, in Dorian Morphy's case, was a summer student in 1996 and is now a key member of the leadership here at True North Sports and Entertainment. So those stories run throughout the organization. We have an opportunity to tell those stories. We have the opportunity to tell more fleshed out stories now about players who started with the Moose here back in whether it was 2015, 16, or in those first few seasons. Well, now they've had years to play in the National Hockey League, so we can kind of tell those stories in more detail. Of course, we've got some fun things planned for November 23rd, which is the 25th season game, which is where we'll really kick the celebrations into high gear. We've got some very cool collector pin giveaways throughout the season. And I think in talking to Colin and Raquel, the idea this year was to, yes, we have that focal point game, but there's also going to be opportunities to kind of tell those stories throughout the season and make sure that if you're not at that game or one of those specific giveaway games, something like that, that you still get to take a part of that history along with you. So we want to tell those stories throughout the season and really bring everybody along for the ride, because we know that for a whole generation of fans now, the Moose were their pro hockey team. There was no Jets. And at that time, I mean, even some of those younger fans, while they had a concept of, yeah, okay, the Winnipeg Jets, the NHL, the AHL was the game. So I think that's an opportunity for us to engage with those fans and reach back and touch some of those memories while gearing people up for 25 seasons of more memories.
Dan, just quickly, sorry, Drew, just quickly. I was going to say, no, it's
I had a whole good line ready to go there.
Well,
it was going to be, I mean, I workshopped it. I had a test audience.
Well, keep working on it. Keep
all
working on
over it. So
I'm just going to make it quick.
I'm done.
I'm going to make it. Well, that's fine, Daniel.
I'll let you guys sort this out.
No, I was just, the only thing I was going to add was that the one thing I've noticed is that, you know, you get that history that you're talking about from guys like Dawson Bartow, who's from Fox Warren, or Mark Lewinsky, who's from Dauphin. And we spoke with them last week before the series, and they talked about, or maybe it was this week, I think it was last week, when they talked about the importance of the Manitoba Moose growing up and the organization. And I think sometimes people lose sight of how important this organization is to this city and how it was a bridge from NHL back to NHL. And now, you know, it's back. But you hear it in the stories that guys from Manitoba talk about, you know, the importance of what the Manitoba Moose meant to them.
Well, and you hear it in the stories. I mentioned Dorian Morphy the other day. We had a great chat ahead of the season starting, and whether it's him or other senior leadership that were here kind of through that transition and bringing the NHL back to Winnipeg, to a person, they will say there's no Winnipeg Jets 2.0 without the Manitoba Moose. It was there that they were able to run this franchise like an NHL team, become, as people used to call it, the extra NHL franchise, and create a plug-and-play situation for the NHL that they could just walk into and fire things up. It was a little more complicated than that, I think, but it's a situation where they built a reputation for excellence. They built this fantastic building around me here and provided the stage for the NHL to return, and that doesn't happen without the Manitoba Moose. So in more ways than just being this city's hockey team for 15 years, they set the stage to bring back the NHL to Winnipeg and set that up for success for years to come.
A proud history with the Manitoba Moose and a bright future to come. Daniel Fink is the Moose broadcaster who'll bring us everything we need to know about the Manitoba Moose all season long. Game time, 6 o'clock tonight. Tickets available, moosehockey.com. Did I miss anything?
That was a heck of a line there, Drew. Did you workshop that with a test audience? That was great stuff. Yep, that's it. 6 o'clock puck drop here this evening. Moosehockey.com to get your tickets. And of course, if you can't make it downtown, we'll have the game for you on cjlb.com/sports, as well as AHL TV on Flow Hockey.
There you go. Dan, thanks for that. Thanks for this. We'll see you later on tonight. Appreciate it.
Thanks, gents. We'll talk to you later.
Take care, Dan. There he goes, Dan Fink, joining us this morning to talk about the Manitoba Moose. We'll take our final commercial break. We'll come back. We'll wrap the show. We'll get you set for tomorrow against the Lightning, and Dave will probably do a very quick prospects update. So don't go anywhere. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk with you Saturday morning, the Illegal Curve Hockey Show presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Center. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Center. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Big thanks to Dan Fink. Big thanks to Dan Robertson for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. As I mentioned from the outset, a day full of D's, as Dave Minuk and Drew Mindell, that's me, will wrap up this morning's show. Dave, quick prospect update. Go.
Okay, well, in the OHL, you had Jacob Julian, the 2023 fifth rounder. He had a goal, the game-winning goal, and an assist, while Colby Barlow got on the scoreboard with a shot so quick, I don't even think the camera caught it. He scored on a 5-on-3 power play. And so he's been heating up because he's got 3 goals in his last 2 games. And you need to see that because he started off very slow in Oshawa. Kevin, he was held off the score sheet. And Kieran Walton, the 2024 6th rounder, he had an assist. In the WHL, Braden Yeager was going up against Marcus Lopinen, but neither one picked up any points. And then Connor Levis, the 2023 7th rounder, Drew, he got his 7th goal of the season for his hometown Vancouver Giants in a win over, I think it was the Saskatoon Blades they played. And it was a wild game. It was like 7-6, I think, final. And Zach Naring, the 3rd rounder from 2022 3rd rounder, Drew, or a 2021 3rd rounder? No, I think 22, or maybe 23, actually. Maybe a 23. Actually, I think he's a 23 third rounder. Anyway, Zach Naring was named.
Is that your final answer there? You're going to keep disagreeing
Yeah,
with
no, I'm
yourself?
going to go with 2023 third rounder, but he's the NCHC Rookie of the Month. He played for the Western Michigan Mustangs. And so I'm assuming you're fact checking me here, Drew?
2023 third rounder. I don't know why I bother to fact check you. The man doesn't sleep, folks, so that he can bring you updates about Zach Naring and his performance with the Western Michigan Broncos.
Broncos. I said Mustangs. So there's, I did get
Broncos.
I did get something.
You
wrong.
know about the prospects. I know about the Mac football nickname. So now that it's into November, it's time for some midweek action in college football, which I'm very excited about. I was at the Jets game on Monday and I saw a guy wearing an Ohio Bobcats t-shirt. So I had to go up and have a lengthy conversation with him. And I think he was very concerned about the amount that I knew about the Ohio Bobcats college football team. So you stick to the Jets prospects and I'll stick to the MAC football teams instead.
Happy to do so. So yeah, that's your prospects update. And again, like I said, the Moose are back in action tonight, so we'll have some more focus on them, and a lot of those prospects will be playing again tonight. So we'll keep you up to date on a little site called illegalcurve.com.
Yes, and illegalcurve.com, as always, is your number one resource, along with our YouTube channel for all your Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose news, audio, video, everything under the sun. Just bookmark those two sites and you'll be fully up to speed. That's it for us on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We're next in action tomorrow after the Jets and the Tampa Bay Lightning, right around 4:45 or so. It's going to be the post-game show. Dave Minuk and Connor Harabchuk are going.
I haven't actually asked Connor yet, so you just announced it before I've asked him, but okay.
Well, you might as well ask Connor because I'm not available. Ginsburg's not back till Tuesday, so it's going to be Dave Minuk and somebody. Dave Minuk and friends.
Maybe I should do it. Maybe I should do a team with a team up with Spency.
Yeah, Dave and Spency. God help us all. We're going to bring the latest on the Winnipeg Jets Tampa Bay Lightning game tomorrow afternoon. Of course, illegalcurve.com is your resource, as I mentioned. If you missed any of the show, the instant replay is available on the YouTube channel. The podcast will be available shortly thereafter. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. Big thanks to our sponsors, our friends at Play Now, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, and Seagram's. Support these businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. So appreciate all of you who joined us last night for the post-game show. So appreciate all of you who joined us this morning for the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. If you haven't already done so, and I know you have, smash the like button, subscribe, like, share, tell a friend, everything under the sun. Do that because that's your job for us providing you with this content. Have a great Saturday, everybody. We'll see you again soon. For Dave Minuk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on YouTube and all of our social media platforms.